friends, neighbors, and of course, the YouTube comment section. Hello. Welcome to the LM Cases conference room, where today we are going to be demoing a Polk audio system. So, like all things in my ever popular quest for YouTube content, I figured I'd take you guys along with me on this beta test. So, long story long, as I'm sure we'll get into in this video, I need a way of making a consumer TV drive a sound system. Now, in previous builds, so from probably 2007 or so until maybe a couple of weeks ago, I was able to use the analog output of a Sony TV. And this was very cool. They just had a headphone output on it. All I would have to do is take a little TRS cable and solder that to 2 RCAs and put that into a DBX Zone Pro, and life was good. All of the functionality for the system could be used with the TV's remote control, which is great. The systems that we build are generally a monitor on a lift, a TV on a lift, we'll say, so we don't confuse audio monitor and video monitor. And we put them mostly in schools and dressing rooms for touring kind of applications. There are other people that use them for like offstage monitoring and stuff like that. So if you have a video signal on the wings, this tells you when the artist to go on, that kind of thing. So the beauty about those systems is that a non-technical person can use them because the TV's remote control was the primary source controller for both volume and input. So when Sony decided to get rid of the analog output and just make it eARC, that really threw a wrench into things, because you have to put a soundbar in, which in a normal consumer level kind of install is totally fine. But in this pro level world, we need something a little bit more heavy duty than that. Secondarily speaking, the way that we arranged the speakers, where there were 2 10-inch subs, and then there were 2 8-inch two-way studio monitors on top of that were all stacked in a foam-lined compartment. Now, I can already hear you groaning, comb filtering, comb filtering, comb filtering. You can't just do that, and you're right. So the way that we got around that was we used the DBX Zone Pro, and that gave us some delay options on our outputs, which, long story long, a couple of milliseconds of delay really just cleaned all that up. And as a matter of fact, it really put a nice stereo image on things. We have one client who told me he will now proof all of his mixes on our cases before sending them out to go into the world. That was a hip-hop client, so you know that the bass was just right. So today's video is kind of a beta test. We got an order for another client that wants to do another entertainment center case, and I told him, you got to let me figure out this audio system because the old way no longer works. I had one Sony TV in stock that had the ever popular analog audio outputs, and I used my last one, so I actually have to sit down and figure this out today. So I made a video begging and pleading. There was a Shop Talk episode begging and pleading with you guys if there's anything you can give me. And come on, I thought you guys were a bunch of nerds. You're supposed to help me with this kind of stuff from one nerd to another. Got nothing. So anyway, we're in the LM Cases conference room today. I am a firm believer in, I like the Sony X800 line of TVs, so guess what's in our conference room? A Sony X800, and we've got a Polk audio system in here today to check it out as a beta test. So the best way that I can figure this out at the moment is to use powered subwoofers from the Polk audio line and use passive Polk bookshelf speakers with a Sonos AMP, because the Sonos AMP has an HDMI eARC input on it. So that will take care of the attenuation. Now, the other way we can do it is we can have a DBX Zone Pro that's in there and use a Sonos port. The only bad thing about the Sonos port is it doesn't have an eARC input. It's only an analog input and only an analog output. So we would still have to use a sound bar on the TV, which means we'd have to make a bracket to hang a sound bar underneath the TV and then feed that with HDMI and then get that into Sonos world. Oh, long story short, Sonos is the way that I think we should do this. We're using Sonos to get eARC into our world. So anyway, I think the cheapest way of doing that is with a passive set of bookshelf speakers and a Sonos amp. Again, I'm looking for recommendations. This is a beta test, but I think that this is going to work pretty good. So I'm going to show you my not at all acoustically relevant placement of speakers and comb filtering city setup. So we'll check this out. So here's what our rig looks like. We have 2 subs and 2 tops arranged in a sort of way that they'll be in the case. And then we have off to the side our Sonos AMP. So before I hooked all this stuff up and there was a spaghetti of cables, I figured I would just show you guys what this stuff looks like. So the subs here, these are Polk HTS 10s, and the tops are ES20s, both from Polk. And LM, conveniently enough, is a Polk dealer. As well as Sonos, which is why I spec Sonos for all kinds of stuff. So our like amenities cases and things like that all get Sonos because LM's a Sonos dealer. And if you wonder why there is a ubiquity of Sonos in my house, that is also the reason. So here is the back of the amp. This HDMI in, which is kind of wild to look at an amp and say that's the input source is HDMI, but it is. You have RJs here so you can feed your internet signal, your LAN signal in here, and then it can repeat it if you need to. You have analog inputs, which is good. That helps me. I can have an analog aux jack in here. The other thing is it does give us a dedicated subwoofer output, and then it gives us these very cool little funky banana clips that are in here to wire speakers in. So let's just go in here like that. Well, like that. You get the idea. The subs are powered. You get a volume knob, a low pass filter, a phase switch, and then auto power. The only tricky thing with this is the only way to feed them is with either RCA, left and right, which is fine, and that is designed for inputs, according to the manual, that don't have a dedicated subsend, so that's kind of full range audio. And then there's this LFE. But the only bad thing is, if you're a crazy guy like me and you want to run 2, you can't link them together. So I panic soldered this Y RCA cable right here, which is just basically splitting this. And, you know, anything that's worth doing is worth overdoing. So let's see if this works. It might not. It might be super noisy. So I don't think that I need these, but I also panic soldered some RCAs right here. But it's going to be wireless. I'm just going to feed the signal from my phone. So first glance at these, this is a, oh God, I think it's a 6-inch driver in this with a tweeter. They're wrapped in this kind of cool pseudo wood grain kind of thing, which is very nice. They're very nice looking speakers. And they all have this sort of bass radiator thing that goes in the back. If you look, I don't know how well the contrast on the camera, combined with my poor shooting skills, there's going to show you, but there's this little point that goes in the back. And that carries over to the sub. It also has that little point bass radiator thing. I don't know if you can see that in the bottom. At first glance, I think this should work well. The only thing that kind of scares me about this for putting it in a road application is that the bottom portion of this is plastic. So this is going to need a little bit of extra love and support. Sorry, my gimbal is freaking out here. This is going to need a little bit of extra love and support so that plastic element doesn't break when it's on the road. That's the only thing that I'm looking at with these, and I'm kind of like, I don't know. But we are a case company, so we can figure that out. So I've got RCAs, and I grabbed some speaker cable from downstairs and just tinned the ends. So I am going to hook everything up, and we will check back in. Okay, so everything is wired and the Sonos app is trying to find the amp. Now, I don't know how that's actually going to work because I'm just trying it over Wi-Fi, which in theory should be fine because I have an access point in this room, but if not, we may have to run a Wi-Fi or a network cable to the ever popular LM walnut studio rack that's in there. And we can't find it. Okay, stand by. Checking back in. Okay, so now we're finally alive. Oh my God. There are certain things about Sonos that are just kind of annoying. One, if you're an integrator, it would be super cool if Sonos had an integrator app that allowed you to just configure systems and then hand them off. So because having multiple Sonos accounts on your phone is kind of frowned upon, you have to log out and log back in. I realized that all the other Sonos components that we have here at LM is set up on my mother's phone. So I swear to God, I'm almost 40. I had to go get my mother's phone and configure it from that. The other interesting thing about the Sonos stuff is sometimes it really doesn't like to connect to Wi-Fi. So if you'll notice here, we have the overly overkill LM Tor Systems shameless product plug Cat 6 cable. The other thing is when you're configuring this, there's a little pin on the back of the amp, which is interesting. There's a pin number that you have to put in while you're configuring it. So there's my gripe about Sonos. Everything is fine. Everything is good. So I'm going to play audio through this thing now. But that did take like 20 minutes to set this thing up and then update it just to get it to connect to Wi-Fi and that kind of stuff. So sorry for yelling. Sorry for complaining. We'll see if we can make sound. Okay. So before YouTube gets me with copyright, I think I can probably get a little bit of kick drum in here. So absolutely no processing on everything, stereo field wise. They sound pretty good, I gotta say. Hang on, I'm gonna shut this off before the melody line comes in and YouTube dings me. If you're ever looking for a really good sounding concert, check out 1997's Fleetwood Mac, The Dance. Really great drum sound on there. I use that a lot if I'm demoing home theater systems and stuff like that because it's just something that's on YouTube. So what I am gonna do now is just now that I have a bass level, so the subs are at 12 o'clock as far as volume goes, and the low pass filter is wide open. And it sounds good, which tells me that the low frequency channel on the amplifier is good, and then whatever the sub processing is doing, I don't know if it hits it with the low pass filter or not on the way in, but it does sound really nice. I mean, I just have a lav mic on, so I'm sure that you at home are probably getting all of the off-axis coloration on that, but I am gonna run Sonos's room tuning software because I just want to see what it does. So looking at how the system is set up here, this is the worst possible speaker placement that you could ever ask. The speakers are super close together. The tops are right on top of the subs, and wait for it, there's a conference room table in front of them. So this is an experiment of what does it sound like flat, and then also what does it sound like after you run the room tuning on it. To see what Sonos's room tuning will do in this sort of acoustic environment, which is terrible. So let's see. Okay, so I had a minute to play with everything. I had some time to listen to some music on it and play with it. And there are a couple of things that are a little disappointing, I'm not gonna lie. So the one thing that I was really, really leaning on was that I could use Sonos TruePlay, which is their room pinking DSP thing. Turns out you can't use it with the amp unless you're using the Sonos architectural speakers, the in-wall or the in-ceiling speakers. That's the only way. I don't really understand why they won't let you control third-party speakers. It seems like, you know, room pinking and delay and DSP and that kind of thing is a normal thing, but I don't know. That's strike one. Strike two is there is a LFE sub output on the amp, but with this version of the Sonos app, you can see it, but you can't control it. So there's that. So my ability to adjust the sub volume and therefore have an app-based control of the crossover filter is not there. And I looked on the Sonos forum, so this is the end of June in 2024, and there's a thing in the Sonos forum saying that Sonos knows about it and they're working on a fix as of 30 or so days ago. But as of June 2024, that is not there. So in conclusion, oh, and I should say, so that being said, I can't set the delay on any of the speakers, so they're very phasey. You know, again, we're using speakers in a way that they're not designed to be used. I understand that. I think if this was a bookshelf application in your house, you would never know the difference. To somebody who doesn't set up PA systems for a living, you would never know the difference, and I think it sounds fine. I had my mom come in here. She thought it sounds great. I think it sounds phasey as hell, but, you know, that's where we're at. So where I'm at, and again, I'm asking you guys if anybody can shed some light on this, because, again, I'm not a hi-fi guy. My options at the moment are to use the amp, take the line out of the amplifier, and feed a drive rack or a Zone Pro with it like we were doing. And I think if we do that, it'll sound great. It just seems like it's a waste of cash to have a $600 amplifier that we're not using, because we can't take the amplified outputs because I don't have any DSP over that. But again, the problem with my systems are I need to use the remote control for the TV, the factory TV remote control, to control the sound system volume. And it's actually kind of cool. My experiment in my last video when I asked you guys for help was, I think that the Sonos amp is attenuating the volume, and the answer is it is. So when you click the volume button on the remote, the little indicator light on the TV is activated, and the indicator light on the amp is activated. So I know that the amp is attenuating the volume. So again, per my last episode of Shop Talk, if anybody out there in hi-fi land has a solution for this, please let me know. I have a system that I need to build for a client, and I need to figure this out, and it just seems like a waste of money to use the $600 amplifier to then therefore feed DSP. So, but I think that's my only option at this point. It also seems kind of crazy to use the Sonos bar and then feed a port. So it's I either need to spend $600 on a Sonos bar and a Sonos port, or use a $600 amp. So right now, I'm leaning towards just using the amp and getting rid of these Polk speakers and going back to just using my Persona studio monitors, which sound really nice. So anyway, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm certainly in an information gathering mode right now, so I'm going to be doing some furious Googling. Speakers sound good. They just need a little bit of DSP, and it's just a little bit more than the Sonos app can give me. So again, if you have any questions, please just leave me an answer below. I'm obviously asking you guys a question, so if there's something you can do to help your pal Billy out, please just leave a comment below. But anyway, as always, with all of these videos, thank you so much for watching. Catch you on the next one. Bye.